Hello class, Mr. Diaz here again. We're going to go ahead and take a look at part 2. But before we go into part 2, I forgot to give you an example of what do we do when we have a fraction. So this particular problem comes from part 1. This is 1D. So if we take a look at it, it's not that much difference between this and what we were doing before. The only exception now is that you're going to have to change these into a fraction. So obviously the first thing that you got to do is you got to put a 1 under there. So we could go ahead and change these into fractions. Now it's going to be a little bit more challenging because of what we have to multiply here by. But let's go ahead and distribute. And we're going to do it a little bit different because we're dealing with fractions. So first we got to multiply 2x, 2/3 x times 5x 1 over 1. So we're going to go ahead and distribute here. And let's put this in parentheses. And we're going to do the same thing for the second term. So this will be 2/3 x. And once again, we put the 6 over 1 x squared. And we do that for the last one as well. So it'll be 2/3 x parentheses negative, actually this should be negative 7 over 1 x to the third. So essentially what we're trying to look out for is, once again, remember that when we multiplied fractions, we tried to reduce diagonally. So let's take a look diagonally, see if there is anything that we could reduce. There's nothing that we could reduce. So we're going to multiply this. 2 times 5, that'll be 10. And 3 times 1 will be 3. Keep in mind we're using the exponent rule, the previous one. So x times x will be x squared. Remember, we add the exponents according to our product rule. Remember, this comes from what we did in section 4.1 and what we just mentioned right now, this product rule that we did right here. So that covers the very first term right there. And don't worry about simplifying this. Just leave it as improper. We don't have mixed fractions when it comes to polynomials. It looks kind of weird. So that takes care of that. We're going to do the same thing with the second term. In this case, the 3 cancels out, so it goes once, and 3 goes into 6 twice. So we're going to multiply 2 times 2, which will be 4, and 1 times 1, which will be 1. And once again, x times x squared. Remember, this is to the first power. So this will be x to the third. And once again, in that particular case, for that term, we're going to go ahead and simplify them a little bit since we ended up with 4 over 1. And finally, we end up with the last term right there. There's nothing that we can reduce diagonally. So in this case, we're multiplying positive 2x to the 2/3 x times negative 7 over 1 x to the third. So remember, the sign is going to change here. So this will be now, it's negative 14, 2 times 7, that'll be negative 14 over 3 over 3. So 3 times 1 will be 3. And x to the first times x to the third. Once again, use your exponent rule, your product rule, so this will be x to the fourth. So as far as the multiplication, we've already done it. So now what we're going to have to do is just simplify this 4 over 1. So our final answer will look a little bit different, but it's essentially the same thing. 10 to the third x squared. 4 over 1, we're going to simplify it to 4 x to the third. And over here, the negative 14 over 3 x to the fourth. And that would be your answer right there. So once again, not too difficult to work with, but essentially that's how we deal with fractions right there. Now, for the second part that you have on your worksheet right there, you're going to notice that it's a little bit different. Now we're going to be dealing with binomials. So let's take a look at a couple of examples right there. So you're no longer dealing with a monomial times a binomial or a trinomial. Now you have two terms for each of them. What we're going to do is we're going to distribute each of these. So first, we're going to distribute the x. So x times x will be x squared. And x times 3 will be 3x. So once again, it's like you're distributing that single part right there, that x. X times x, x squared. X times 3, 3x. So that takes care of the x right there. Next, we're going to distribute the next term, which is the 2. So in this case, the 2 times the x will be 2x. And 2 times 3 will be 6. Now you may be asking, what's the difference if we're doing multiplication the same? Well, the difference here is that when you're dealing with binomials, you're more than likely are going to have to collect like terms. So if we take a look here, we could go ahead and collect the 3x and the 2x. The previous examples that we didn't have that. But in this particular case, we do. So we're going to go ahead and keep the x squared. 3x plus 2x, that'll simplify to 5x. And bring down the plus 6. So you end up with x squared plus 5x plus 6. And that would be your answer right there. So once again, not too difficult. And once again, we're going to go through these examples. Letter B, same thing. We're going to go ahead and first distribute. We're going to go ahead and distribute the x first. That's our first term right there. So don't worry about the 2 there. So in this case, we distribute the x times x, x squared. X times negative 6 is negative 6x. So that takes care of the x. And you're going to do the same thing for the next one. We're going to distribute the 2. So 2 times x will be positive 2x. And 2 times negative 6 will be negative 12. So we completed distributing the second part right there, that 2. And you're going to see the same thing that we had before. We're going to have to collect like terms. In this particular case, we're going to collect the negative 6x plus the 2x. So in this case, this will be x squared. And if you collect negative 4x plus 2x, that'll give you negative 6x plus 2x, excuse me. That'll give you negative 4x. And we bring down the minus 12. So that would be your answer for that one right there. All right, let's move on. And notice that I'm giving you different examples, so you have different examples of these. So the next one, letter C, we have x minus 4 times x minus 5. Same idea. Notice that the pattern of the signs are different, but the same idea. First distribute the x. X times x is x squared. And x times negative 5, that'll give you negative 5x. We're going to do the same thing with the negative 4. Negative 4 times x is negative 4x. And negative 4 times negative 5, it gives you positive 20. So once again, negative 4 times x is negative 4x. Negative 4 times negative 5 is positive 20. Remember your sign rules. Same thing as before, we're going to have to go ahead and collect like terms. Here we're going to go ahead and collect these two. So this becomes x squared minus 9x plus 20. And that would be your answer. All right, so here I'm going to stop it because I have a 15-minute limitation. So in a little bit, we're going to continue on with part 2.